Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here. And today, it's just going to be me. Fox is out doing Fox things. He's, I think, spending time with his boyfriend, which, because of this show and COVID and their distance, is a rare opportunity I would never want to get in the middle of. Not that I had a choice. But no, he's doing important stuff. And instead, I'm just going to be on the show by myself. I could have probably invited someone on, but I did not think to or try to, other than we tried getting Krieg on, but he was busy. So it's going to be all Dire, all night, or approximately however long it takes me to do 5 stories. I didn't also write the amount of stories that would be a full show, because Fox does a lot for the show. He does half, if not sometimes more, of the writing, as well as being the producer and being on-air talent. So I very much appreciate all he does, but I'm going to be doing this show by myself. He wasn't fired, though it's still an option. I want to thank all you guys who make this show possible, and that's everyone who likes, shares, subscribe. You've heard this spiel from me a million times, but it's important that I remind you that if you want the show to this audience to grow, you guys got to share it, because YouTube doesn't do that. And I still think that DLive doesn't really grow that easily with this genre of content to doing news. They mostly do gaming. Same with Twitch. But also I want to thank everyone who makes, who actually has donated to us financially. You know all the names: Timberwolf, the White Lion, Thunder Erican, who's female, Slowpoke, Tetris Freak. We have a lot of great people who support this channel and make these shows happen. I very much appreciate it. But let's move on to the news. I just want to bring up one quick reminder that when you see these videos of what they're claiming is riot cops, having responding overly violently to peaceful protesters, you got to understand it's the same thing with all other videos you see online, where you're not seeing what led up to that action. And more often than not, what is the catalyst for the police going in and violently arresting someone or pushing people back is because something violent has already happened to them. They don't show you the protester throwing the bricks. They don't show you the protesters beating people up or destroying property. They claim that the people that are being arrested were peaceful protesters, whereas we know from all the news reports of the damage and the injuries to cops and the injuries to people who are just bystanders that no, they're not peaceful protesters. And the reason why the cops are going in is because they are responding to the violent actions of the rioters, not protesters. But it is a propaganda game. What they do is they will throw fireworks, throw bricks, or in this case, it's come out recently that they're actually using paintball guns to assault the police officers to get them to take a escalated action. They're escalating the violence, and then the police are responding to that escalation, and then they take video of only the response. So it's all a propaganda game, and they do the same thing to just random people they want to destroy. There's that recent video of this one dude who followed a woman home and was claiming that she had called him and the N-word, and she was crying and upset, and we don't know. She may have said that. We also have equal evidence that she didn't, because we have no evidence. Just because someone says something doesn't mean that person did something. We have the amateur rapper, which, by the way, those are a dime a dozen. It doesn't mean you have any kind of clout. But some sort of amateur rapper was taking video of his brother beating the fuck out of a store employee, and he claims that person had used the N-word, Maybe he didn't. Maybe he did. We don't know. It's also not a justification. I find it funny that people are saying, "Oh, well, he used that word. That word is so evil that it is tantamount to violence, and thus justifies violence against someone." You know what? You have the freedom of speech, which also is the freedom to be an asshole, which means you can call anyone any slur, and though it means you are an asshole if you actually did that, it doesn't justify violence against you. It's still a crime to beat you up, and still not a crime to be an asshole. So the fact that they use that as a justification for beating them up is absurd, but we still don't even know if he did that. And so you'll see a lot of times these videos taken out of context, and sometimes that person did do what they say they did, but oftentimes they're not. And this is just further propaganda. Either it's something they're trying to push a narrative, or they just want to justify the violence they're taking against someone. They just wanted to beat someone up. They just wanted to harass someone. Maybe the guy taking the video of that woman, that white woman, following her home, maybe he's the racist. We don't know. It's equally plausible that he just wanted to go out and harass somebody today because of the current political climate. She also could have equally, possibly, used that offensive word. Does it justify following her home and harassing her? I don't think so. But that's still not nearly as severe as actually beating someone up and making an act of violence. But as a side note, the actual real story I was not getting into was, so you know how a lot of Democrat state and city leadership have been supporting these riots, the BLM and Antifa riots, that they are saying were because of the Floyd killing, but really in reality they're not. So in Olympia, Washington, Mayor Cheryl Selby was one of the many Democrat leaders who went out and vocally supported the rioting, said their actions were justified, and actually went out and kneeled before the violent radicals and said nothing and did nothing as the rioters destroyed businesses and the homes of the people who live in her city, and was completely silent as her citizens, the citizens of her city, were being attacked and brutalized by these rioters. For a month, she's done nothing but encourage further rioting and made sure that the police did not stop it, because it wasn't a problem as long as it was happening to other people. But then that angry mob came to her home and attacked her house and made her afraid of her safety. And then suddenly she was scared and confused, and she said that this group, that BLM Antifa that she had been vocally supporting amidst their violent actions prior, now she calls them domestic terrorists. What explains the change in how she describes them? Maybe the solution to these BLM and Antifa riots is just to make sure that all these people in government who are supporting them, that those mobs are directed their way. Because it apparently only becomes a problem when it affects them. It's kind of like that one journalist who worked for I forgot what sports magazine he worked for. He was praising the Antifa guys and saying, "Let it burn," actually encouraging the violence, until they were outside his gated community and were attacking his Starbucks and attacking his community. Then it was a problem. Then they were violent animals. It's funny. These people have a lack of compassion. They have a lack of human empathy. It's quite strange. The Democrats don't human very well, right? They're totally fine with these violent things happening to other people because it fits their narrative, but they can't empathize with it possibly happening to them. Whereas people like Fox, myself, or just rational human beings, we can say, okay, that person I don't agree with. I can empathize with their situation, and I wouldn't want that to happen to me, so I'm opposed to it happening to other people. That's the mature view of a situation like this. But they don't have that. They're like, it's totally fine if the little people are getting hurt, as long as I get to maintain my power and my safety.
And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
They are getting, in the midst of them defunding the police in Minneapolis, the city leadership have hired private security amidst the threats against them. All those civilians, all those citizens, I should call them civilians, it's kind of a habit from my where I work, but all the citizens in your city that you've just removed the police from, the people who work and live around CHAZ CHOP, who you've let be victimized for a very long time, they can't hire private security. You can. It's funny. You shouldn't be able to pass laws to which you are insulated from the results of. I think that, so when we passed healthcare, right? I think senators and government leaders should have been forced to use the same medical care that they were pawning off on all of us. That reduced quality care, but as you guys know, they got to have the premium care that was they were completely exempt from Obamacare. We should not be allowed to pass laws that you are not affected by. I know that you make that restriction, it's going to make it really hard to pass laws, but I think that if we're somehow able to work that out, maybe within reason, we get a lot less bad laws. Like, oh, you want to bring a bunch of immigrants in from Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq area? Okay, they gotta live in your neighborhood. Yeah, don't house them in poor neighborhoods. House them in your communities, and then see how they feel about those laws they're passing. So, anyways, I think Mayor Cheryl Selby, it probably isn't red-pilled, but definitely has changed her tune on how she feels about these violent rioters, and now is condemning them and is going to take action, in her city at least, to stop these attacks. A little bit too late. Hopefully the voters will remember that she only cares about herself and not about them, because that's what her actions have showed for the last month. Probably her entire career, but been pretty damn evident in the last month. That was Mayor Cheryl Selby from Olympia, Washington. Real peach. So, next story. Yeah, it's weird not having fun. Oh my god. Was that all? No sound? Shit. Okay. Oh my god. Alright, so if you wouldn't mind in chat, tell me real quick if any of that went through. Oh jeez. You can tell it's been a while since I've produced. Okay, well let's just start over then. I'm muted. Was muted. Okay, it's fixed. So first off, I explained that that Fox is off doing Fox things. Very important stuff. He's not fired. He's just he needs to go do stuff with his boyfriend. And then I thanked all you guys for making the show happen, and I asked you guys to please like, share, subscribe. Let's move back into the stories, though, because I've been talking about the stories for a good while now, but I'll get back to it. Jeez Louise. So, our first story.
And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
For violently reacting to protesters and to arrest them. A lot of people are claiming this is examples of further police brutality, and that this is just police responding violently to peaceful protesters. But you guys know from all the stories we've seen so far that these protesters are far from peaceful. They've destroyed a lot of property, they've attacked a lot of people, and the police are not permitted to go out and just start bashing people. And I'm sure there are examples of police brutality, but more often than not, what's happening is because in those videos you've had a removal of the context. What led up to the police finally going in and arresting that person, or using tear gas or whatever, clearing the street. Usually what's happened is they've thrown bricks, they've thrown fireworks, they've attacked the police or attacked other people, and the police are having to stop them from destroying property or attacking people. It's very rare that they are. It's no catalyst to them going in and doing that. And a few stories came out recently, just this week, examples of them using paintballs to try to instigate interactions with the police like that. And it's all a propaganda setup. They want to attack the police and then only take video of the police's response. Now that's a similar thing to what the social media does for a lot of different things. So like they did to the Covington kids, right? You gotta look real skeptically at any video clip you see online. If you don't have enough context, you don't know what's leading up to that, then you can't really make a judgment about what happened in that video. A couple other examples would be that there was recently a guy who followed a woman home and was saying that she had used the N-word. And did she? We don't know. There's no proof that she actually did anything wrong. All we have is video of him harassing her. And now she could have or could not have said that. But even then, does that justify following someone home and harassing them? I still don't think so. But an even more clear case of that is there was recently a amateur rapper, and amateur rappers are...
And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
Assaulting a store employee, and he was using the justification of, oh, he used the N-word. Well, we don't actually know that. There's no evidence in this video they did that. But even if he did, I find it funny that you say that's the justification for attacking the guy, because someone's words, even if they are really, really offensive, does not justify violence, because words are not violence. So our freedom of speech gives us the freedom to be an asshole. You can say whatever mean thing you want. All they'll do is prove that you are an asshole. But that never justifies, and it never is equal to, actual violence. So I don't know why anyone would assume, oh, because he said the N-word, that this makes it okay for him to beat him up in the middle of the store or anywhere. In any case, so the real story I'm getting into here is that Mayor Cheryl Selby of Olympia, Washington, was praising Antifa, actually kneeled before them and has been supporting them vocally for the last month. has encouraged their violence and also did nothing and said nothing about when those rioters destroyed people's homes, their property, and attacked people in the streets. She was aiding and abetting these violent terrorists as they destroyed her city and harmed her citizens. But her tune has changed this week when that mob finally came to her home. Now it was a problem, and she said that she was scared and confused, and she called it domestic terrorism. Well, why wasn't it domestic terrorism? Why was it, fine what was happening to other people? It's because she doesn't care about the little people. She only cares about herself. The thing about Democrats is they don't human very well. I've heard that said a bunch of times. They lack human empathy. It's kind of funny because when people like myself and Fox, we see something bad happening to someone that we disagree with, we can empathize and say, hey, we wouldn't want that to happen to us, so we don't want that to happen to them. We don't want the people who we disagree with, our political rivals, to have their rights taken away, because that equally means that our rights can be taken away if the roles were reversed. So they don't have that kind of empathy. I think it's a bit of the tribalism and also a bit of the elitism, where they're like, well, it's fine. This violence is fine because it helps my narrative, it helps me stay in power, but it's finally a problem when it happens to me, and now it's domestic terrorism. No, it was always domestic terrorism. You just were not recognizing before, and the voters in your city should recognize that that you only cared about yourself and not about them, and you were willing to subject people to the destruction of their property, making people lose their life savings in some cases, and also some people losing their lives or becoming badly injured by the people you were encouraging. In any case, so this is similar to the story where that one sports writer was praising and actually encouraging, saying, burn it down, so praising the Antifa people until they came to his gated community and they burned down his Starbucks. That was a problem. You know what? Maybe it's a really good strategy. We should just have all these Antifa mobs and BLM mobs just rerouted to the city and state leadership's homes, because then we probably have a crackdown on these things a lot quicker. I got a $5 and $2 tip from Slowpoke. Let's see what they say. It says, tell one of us then, it doesn't work when the admins are not aware of what you're doing. Talk to us, man. Oh, sorry. That's 6 days ago. That wasn't recently. 4 minutes ago. All right, Dyer. We all have boomer moments. Some more than others. Why can't I make the screen bigger? I'm just further proving I'm having a boomer moment, aren't I? A $2 donation is... that's 2 days ago. 6 minutes ago. Dyer, you're muted. Take your cock out of your mouth and then talk. Also, $2. That feeling when you see someone that got what they fucking deserve. Yes. So in that case, I'd say that Cheryl Sebley from Olympia, Washington, the mayor there, definitely got what she deserves, and now she's gonna have the police crack down on Antifa and BLM. She says that she still supports the right to peacefully protest, but that this is completely out of line. Yeah, well, they haven't been peacefully protesting for the last month. So where were you then? And then it's these same Democrat city and state leaders will then go on to criticize people who are calling them out their tyrannical enforcement of COVID-19 restrictions, and be completely opposed to their peaceful protests, say that they're endangering people's lives by just simply protesting at all. How dare they? And calling them neo-Nazis. But then when people who are actually radical racial, rioters come out, like, a lot of them are anti-white people. So I meant by radically racial. When these people come out and they are basically the same as Nazis, but with a different skin color, or different skin color preference, that's not a problem. But that they call people who just saying that, hey, I want to open my salon again, I want to open my restaurant again, those are Nazis, because they want freedom. Whereas the people who want to disband the police and to attack people and destroy property, those people are fine, except for when they come to your home. The hypocrisy is ridiculous. So the next story is, by the way, I'm having trouble watching the chat because I actually got to read the notes. Sorry. So the next story is Lincoln County, Oregon, makes a law that applies to only white people. It sounds satirical to say that a state or city would make a law or a directive in this case that applies to only white people or any one race. But in the world we live in now, it's a real thing. So the commissioner of Lincoln County, Oregon, Claire Hall, created a mandate. It's a directive, not a law, that masks must be worn to combat COVID-19. But she gave an exemption. So first says that everyone must wear these masks, but then said all people of color are exempt though from this directive. In other words, just white people. And I don't know how you could think that passing a directive or law or anything that is just telling one group of one skin color group to do something, how you would not immediately see that as racist. And also, Claire Hall holds institutional power. So if your argument is that, oh, you can only be racist if you hold institutional power, well, they are holding institutional power and they're using it to make, rules that only apply to one racial group, in this case, white people. So how is this not racism? Fucking idiots. So the general directive requires that everyone wear the masks if they are in an indoor setting or if they are in an outdoor setting when they cannot maintain 6 feet of social distancing. So if this is just a recommendation, right, there's no problem to have the city or the state to say, hey, this is, if you want to, reduce the spread of COVID-19, this is how you do it. Here's what we recommend. That's totally fine. And that's basically what this is. But it would be tyrannical if they tried to enforce it with force using the police. It would be further tyrannical and arbitrary if they decided to target only white people. Ironically, they stated the reason for this racist bias law was that people of color had to be exempt for fear of this law being used for racial profiling.
And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Yeah, well, I can't defend myself against that. It's accurate. So the directive says that it's self-executing. So no one should be intimidated or harassed. So they're saying no one should be harassed as anyone who isn't complying with the mask thing, and obviously the police won't be enforcing it. So this was a tantamount to a recommendation, right? And had they not put the exemption in that meant this recommendation was only applying to white people, it wouldn't actually be newsworthy. What's newsworthy is not that they made a directive saying you should be doing this. What newsworthy is that they said only white people should be doing this. So they obviously got called out for having this racist policy. There was a lot of public outcry, and they were being rebuked for making any rule that applies, to only one group, because it's nakedly racist to do that. And if you were to make another directive that was applied only to black people, that would be racist. It's also funny because it's not like black people are less likely to be infected by COVID or to have worse conditions, because actually, statistically, the black community is more affected by COVID-19 negatively. So, if anything, if you're just going by that, you should say that they should definitely be wearing masks. If that's what you're going to say at all. But she went on to say that they ended up, because of the rebuke, actually taking away the exemption so that the rule now applies to everyone. But the reason for taking away the exemption wasn't because it was racist. The reason for taking away the exemption was because people were being racist, and that the exemption was being used as a tool or a reason to be racist. No, the problem wasn't your racist double standard or making a policy that applies only to white people. No, it wasn't the racism of low expectation that you expected that black people were more unable or unwilling to wear masks. No, the problem wasn't that you assume white people are going to harass black people for not wearing masks, which is a pretty big assumption there. No, the problem is that racists will use your racist policy as a reason to be a racist. Oh my god. Um, she's a complete idiot. And all the people that voted for that, but at least Claire Hill, which actually is a dude, is a recent transgender. So she wants to be called she, but she is actually indeed a very, very ugly he. And ugly because of what's in the heart, not just his face. Because you clearly have either really low expectations of black people or you really hate white people. It's one of the two things, maybe both. But I think it should be easy to understand that you shouldn't be making any law that applies to only one group. It seems like common sense to me. So the next story, this is going to be a short show, by the way. Fox has helped fill in a lot of time. So the next one is Washington Post epically fails at fact-checking Trump. So Trump has said a lot recently that the cities with the top crime, the highest crime cities in America, are all run by Democrats. He has said it in multiple different ways, but he has definitely made the statement all several times. Of course, that's a very definitive statement that is not given context of how many of the top, like, what is it, right? What is it? So when you make a definitive statement like that, Trump should know by now that the left-wing media are going to go out and fact-check him by being overly specific about his words. But in the Washington Post article where they're trying to debunk Trump, saying that he was wrong, that it's not all of these top Democrat cities. Sorry, not all the cities that have the most crime are run by Democrats. They went in and showed that it's in fact just 19 of the top 20 cities with the most crime in the U.S. are run by Democrats. The exception being Jacksonville, Florida, who is the only one that's run by a Republican majority. I don't know how it's helping your case to say, yes, in fact, Democrat cities are 20-1 more likely to be have a high crime. I would be bragging about your cities being plagued with far more crime than Republican ones, and but of course a lot of the Democrats looking at the stats will say, oh well, it's because of population. Democrats tend to run the larger cities. Well, that's actually not true. I mean, they do have more of the larger cities, but Republicans run 29 of the top 100 cities by population in the U.S. So, yeah, the Democrats run 2-1, but you then expect that ratio, if it was just population and that was the matter, you'd expect there to be far more of the cities that are getting the most crime to be run by Republicans if that was the only factor that mattered. Obviously, when it's 19 out of 20, that there is a different factor involved. So San Diego is the 8th largest city in the U.S., and it's run by a Republican majority, and does not appear on the top cities with the most crime at all. So that's a pretty common thing. Is there's a lot of cities that have high populations that are run by Republicans and don't have these crime problems because Republicans run on the concept of the rule of law, whereas Democrats, they are actively encouraging the breakdown of law. So it should be common sense. And the whole point of the article, their own statistics show that Trump is right if you go by the statement of the majority of Democrat cities that have more crime, or the top cities have more crime that are run by Democrats. If that's what the general idea you're trying to get across, then Trump is right. But they're going in and specifically saying, well, he said all, and one of those top 20 was run by a Republican, so you're wrong. Yeah, well, it doesn't make you guys look any better. but it's also Jacksonville, Florida, how long have they been run by Republicans? They didn't bring that up. And I think it's worth pointing out that Florida is a swing state and has been for a while, and goes back Republican and Democrat into cities and the state government often. And but in the last decade, Florida has voted 41.83% for Democrats, and only 35.61% for Republicans. So, though we have had Republican and Democrat leaders as leading different cities in Florida, in particular, including Jacksonville, it's changed hands back and forth. It has been leaning more towards the Democrat Party. So, a lot of these cities that are Republican run, that have low crime rates but high populations, have been run by Republicans for a longer time. I think it's not I don't think it's representative, definitely isn't, by the rest of the cities for the Republican Party when you look at Florida, because it doesn't stay in the Republican hands for very long. It bounces back and forth. But overall, the Washington Post tried to prove that Trump was wrong in pointing out that if you live in a Democrat city, you're more likely to have more crime. Well, they proved him right. The only thing they've proved wrong is what they do with anytime they're trying to fact check Trump is take his words extremely literally and then just prove that very literal statement. But even in doing so, I think that saying that Jacksonville is solely run by the Republicans is ridiculous. It has been more run by Democrats historically than it has been by Republicans. The Republicans get elected in Jacksonville, Florida, they have to cater to their constituents, which are more Democrat than Republican. So they are less Republican than the average Republican. Sometimes they're Republican just in the R, less than actually their policy. Next story. So there's an absurd case of white guilt this week. It is the pinnacle of white guilt. So this story is about Michael Erickson. You may have heard of him and his story, but also about his entire neighborhood in Minneapolis. Because that neighborhood vowed it would not call the police to stop any black person from committing any crime. Their reason for this was that if they call the police may end up killing the black person. You might say, if you don't look through the world in the lens of race, that if there's a person committing a violent crime, that in some cases, the most just response is for the police to shoot that person. Because what if that person, not shooting the person, results in someone dying? Would you rather the criminal die in the middle of a criminal act, or would you rather save the life of the criminal, but sacrifice the life of not only that victim, but the other people he will go on to victimize in the future, he or she? I think the moral choice is to stop the person who is committing the violent crime and protect the person who is not. So, I know, I'm a radical. So, it's not surprising that the very regressive Minneapolis community, it's not surprising that community that set up the CHAZ CHOP, that they would, and the ones that demanded for the disbanding of the police, it's not surprised that they, in Minneapolis, might make such a resolution as to say that they're not going to call the police on anyone who's black who's committing a crime. However, I want to point out that does open up that they're willing to call the police on someone who's white for committing the same crime, which makes you a racist. Because, oh my god. But I know the reason to go, well, I mean, the police are less likely to shoot them, though. So actually, it's not true. The police are more likely statistically to shoot a white person for committing the same crime in the same kind of interaction. So false. So with the police in Minneapolis currently quitting in droves, by the way, it's also possible if they had called the police, they wouldn't be able to show up in the first place. Because the police are a little distracted by the fact that if they do their job, they'll get arrested and possibly charged with murder, and also having to deal with all the rioters. So maybe the police wouldn't be able to come to your community at all, and your little vow to not call them is actually meaningless. However, the absurdity of that policy got tested this week. The policy of not calling the police on a black person who's committing a crime. And that was tested by Michael Erickson, who was robbed at gunpoint last Wednesday by 2 black men who tried to steal his car. They ended up just stealing his house keys. Maybe they're not that bright, I don't know. But they didn't go on to steal a car down the street, not his car. So Mr. Erickson did the sensible thing, initially at least, and he called the police to report the robbery because they stole his keys and tried stealing his car, and they done it with a deadly weapon. And they may not have killed him, but they might kill someone in the future. However, he says he now regrets calling the police and says that he has put those black men in danger by calling the police on them. I'm guessing that he initially did the sensible thing, and then the community got upset with him for calling the police, and now he's changing his tune because he's like, please don't hurt me, don't attack my home, I regret it, please, I don't really care about the rule of law. It's fine for me to be a victim, it's fine for people to try to steal my stuff, it's okay, take it all. Fucking pussy. So it's disturbing for me that in your twisted mind that you believe it should be permitted for someone to steal from you and possibly, with the possibility of killing you or someone else later on, that it seems insane that in your twisted mind that you'd feel guilty for calling the police to protect yourself, but also your community. A good community member would want to ensure that a violent criminal is arrested and removed from their community, not free to victimize more people. It is not justice to refuse to call the police. Now let's be honest. If you had called the police, it's most likely if in that police interaction that person got shot, the reason would not be because of racism. It would probably because they're a violent criminal. Because again, statistics have shown that cops aren't more likely to kill black people in general across the country, and I highly doubt that they would be in this case as well. They're more likely it's going to remove a violent criminal from the streets, and you are saying you regret calling them. What a pussy. White guilt is pretty self-destructive. And it's well, look what it's done in Minneapolis. You have lots of people who are saying, yes, this is justice. White individuals saying, yes, this is justice for our community to be destroyed because we're so evil. The people who have never owned a slave are saying that they are guilty for, oppressing people who've never been slaves. Every white person isn't guilty because some police officers have abused their authority. Those police officers, of course, not all being white. So why is it my fault when a black police officer just hypothetically abuses his authority and kills an unarmed black person? Why is it white supremacy that this person, his individual, used their individual agency to commit a crime? It's not all white people that committed that crime. It might not have been a white person at all. It's ridiculous. Anyways, I'm sure that right now, if Fox were on the show, he would be telling me a long lecture about how logic doesn't matter to them and I should just get over it. Okay, so the next and last story, unless you guys have something you want to ask me about, is the Project Veritas claims that Facebook is tampering with the upcoming elections. Shocking! It's not like we've had a lot of evidence about this so far. Other leakers, the fact that they are percentage, like we can clearly look at the percentage of content they're deleting and see that they are deleting stuff on a politically biased standard. But they just have more evidence now that just further proves it. Even though Mark Zuckerberg has testified before Congress that Facebook is politically neutral. Full of shit. Only a lizard person android could say that with a straight face. But Project Veritas has released another video, and this time they have an insider, goes by the name of Zach, I believe, who works at one of the firms that does the moderating for Facebook. So Facebook has an algorithm, just like YouTube, that will pick up content based on different factors, and then flags it as being something that needs to be reviewed, and it's then sent to these contractors who are given a set of requirements of what to look for, what is permissible, what is not permissible, and then those individuals, contractors, actually make the determination of whether or not the content should be removed or the user penalized or deleted, right? So this contractor took video of his co-workers talking about what they are looking for and what kind of content they remove. And they made it very, very clear that they are removing content based on race and politics. They're more likely to remove someone who's white. They clearly said that they see someone with a MAGA hat, they're going to delete it for terrorism. And then they are willing to keep similar content that made by people on one political side of the spectrum, but not the other. So they have a very biased way of enforcing. And though this is not Facebook directly, it is shown that the people who are working for Facebook as contractors clearly are making decisions on a politically biased standard. And then that same person who took the video, who worked at Facebook or worked as a contractor for Facebook, also was willing to testify before Congress, saying that 80% of the content that gets flagged by the algorithm is conservative content. So it's not only the bias of the workers who are, are evaluating the content, but it's also the algorithm itself is biased in that it is flagging content 80 to 20%. So 80% towards conservative, 20% towards not conservative. So it's already biased. So it's twofold a problem, both the algorithm that's supposed to be unbiased and also the employees that are actually doing the vetting. So, I mean, this isn't any surprise. This is a little more evidence on the heap of evidence. But this has some pretty serious ramifications for the election, right? So, they claimed a lot that Trump was trying to manipulate the election. They try to blame Russian bots on him. They try to say he was using fake news and his supporters were using fake news. But we actually have a lot of examples of Facebook and YouTube are sponsoring and boosting CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, who have objectively published false articles and not retracted them, or if they do retract them, they retract them quietly. And they have legitimately posted fake news, and that has been supported by Facebook and YouTube. Whereas stuff that conservatives have published that ended up being true, been verified, defenses of the president and fact checks of the liberal media, those have been removed. Those have been marked as being fake news, and those have had additional rebukes. Like in case of Twitter and YouTube, they'll put here's more information about this topic, and it'll try to refute the statement that has been made. So they are affecting the election by affecting what information is being available to you and providing counterpoints. Now, hopefully, this will lead to some sort of action by Congress, but I highly doubt it will. They've been pretty ineffectual in this area. They've had hearings, they've talked about it, but not enough actual action, Now, what kind of action could they take? Well, I think one thing that's been floated, and it seems reasonable to me, is that they're acting like a publisher, not a platform. So let's treat them like that. Don't give them protections. How about we make it so Facebook can be sued for all the fake news that they are propping up from the left-wing media? But if you do that, that'll absolutely destroy Facebook, and it will no longer exist anymore because they can't do that. So would that mean that they would change? Possibly. Might mean they get replaced, but I think that I think those tech companies are too powerful to just disappear. They'll probably just rebrand, probably just change. But I don't know if they'll ever remove them from their influence, and I'm not sure we can ever stop them from abusing it. But can't know until we try, and right now the conservatives in Congress have not really tried. So I know Trump has definitely called them out a lot, but at what point is calling people out for years for what they're doing wrong? When do you move on to actual action, right? I'm getting a bit frustrated with it. I know Fox is a lot more frustrated with it. But that's where we're currently at with Facebook. We know that they're nakedly biased, and we know that they are trying to affect the election, and yet we're doing nothing about it. Hopefully that changes. So I can go over the chat real quick and see if you guys have said anything. I didn't do as much writing for
And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
That's funny. I don't know how I got muted. Well, that's funny. I will see you guys on Wednesday. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I know it was quite a bit shorter than usual, but, you know, had only 5 stories I want to talk about. I don't want to keep talking about all the different examples. Like I said, most of the stories from this week were more violence from Antifa or talking about Trump's, and Barr's new task force where they're going to investigate and try to arrest people from Antifa. I don't want to keep repeating things we've already said for the last month over and over again. It's just going to get really old. So let's cover some of the funny ones I thought from this week. Anyways, we'll see you guys on Wednesday. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys want to talk a little bit later, I'll be in Discord for a little bit. But we'll see you guys then. And Fox should be on for the next show.